We finished up our summer times in the Psalm part 1. Last week we went looking for Jesus. And today we're going to start talking about minor prophets. You know what you're thinking? What on earth is a minor prophet, right? Well, in alphabetical order, here are their names. Amos, Habakkuk, Haggai, Hosea, Joel, Jonah, Malachi, Micah, Nahum, Obadiah, Zechariah, and Zephaniah. And I didn't name any of these guys, okay? They're probably some of the most underread books of the Bible. They're those last 12 books, right at the end of the Old Testament, just before we get to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And as I said, there are 12 of them, but we're going to only discuss 10 over the next 10 weeks. And so who were the unfortunate souls that got voted off of the island? Well, we will not be discussing in this series Jonah or Nahum because they are unique. All of the other guys were sent to the nation of Israel or to the nation of Judah, God's people. These two guys were sent to the same country to do kind of a gospel message, a gospel presentation. They were sent to the land of Nineveh. Now, don't feel too bad for them. They'll be back next year. They'll get their very own sermon series next year, but they just didn't quite fit in what we're doing. When we talk about minor prophets, in them you will find what we call messianic prophecies. These are prophecies about that Jesus would fulfill in his life on this planet. You'll also find some end-time prophecies, which is usually things that we associate with Jesus' second coming. So you'll find a few of those sprinkled throughout the minor prophets. But for the most part, the messages in these prophecies, well, they're to the nations, again, of Israel and Judah. And they're about pending judgment that is about to come on the nation unless they return to God. And this is the reason we don't like these books. Because when you read through these books, let's be honest, it sounds like a grumpy old man shaking his finger at you, giving you a lecture about all the things you should be doing and all the things you shouldn't be doing. And they're just not a lot of fun. They're called minor prophets simply because they're a lot shorter than if we were going to try to do Isaiah, Daniel, Ezekiel. They're just kind of shorter books, the longest being Hosea and Zechariah, which is around 14 chapters. The shortest one, believe it or not, is Obadiah. That's the sermon you want to come to. It's only 21 verses. How much could there be, right? But we need to understand, just because we call them minor prophets, and just because they're shorter books of the Bible, it does not mean that there are not some major messages from these minor prophets. So in this series, it's not going to be done chronological. We're actually going to go in book order because nobody can really agree with the chronological order. We've got some ideas, but there's debate over it, so it's just easier. We're going to take them in book order. So that means right now you can grab your copy of God's Word and you start making your way to Hosea, which may take you a little bit because you may have never seen the book of Hosea other than in the little beginning at the index at the beginning. So you can be looking for the book of Hosea. In this study, it's not going to be an all-inclusive study of these books. I'm doing 1 week per prophet, so I'm not going to go in very deep. I'm not interested in the history unless you think the history is important. Unless the history is important enough to the point. If you do think that history is important for you, it's called Google, okay? You can go out there and Google it, and you can find all the kind of history. And also, if you don't like to Google, you can buy a book. So I'm going to give you a recommendation right now for a book. This is a book that, as I was preparing, it's called Major Points from the Minor Prophets by John Blanchard. He kind of took all of these guys and my hundreds and hundreds of pages notes that I had taken from the minor prophets, and he did a really nice job of pulling it all the way into a readable format, one that doesn't put you to sleep at night, but also something that kind of points on some of the major points. So if you're looking for a good book, he could be a really good book for you to read if you want all the history stuff, because he does that too. So how we look at these books is going to depend on how it's written. We're going to look at the major theme of all of them. For some, we're going to focus on a little small passage, and for others, like today, we're actually going to tell the story that goes behind it. And somewhere along the way, we're going to make some application. So that means that's your curl up your toes warning, because we're going to take these things and bring them into the modern time and say, so what does it mean? So as I was crafting all of these sermons, I thought, okay, so I've got to find a way to at least make it interesting, because some of this can get really dry. So I wanted to approach our sermon series like a newspaper editor. So if I was given the task of taking these books from the Bible and creating a headline that would capture everybody's attention and make you interested in the story, what would I write? So for Hosea, how about this one? God told me to marry a prostitute. How's that for a great headline? Man, that means this is going to be kind of a rough series. Well, just hold tight, because that actually is what happens. God told Hosea to marry a prostitute. The theme of the book is redemption, which is an important one. Israel as a nation was considered the wife of God. They were the chosen nation of God to provide the path for the Messiah. That was their job, was just to provide the birthing place and the birthing line for the Messiah. As part of their responsibility, they were supposed to live in a monogamous relationship with Jehovah God. So that means one God, one nation. I know we use that a lot for America. Believe it or not, that's probably not true, and I'm not sure that it ever was totally true. But for Israel, it was supposed to be one God, one nation, one people. And well, as we get to Hosea, it just hasn't played out all that well. Hear the word of the Lord, you Israelites, because the Lord has a charge to bring against you who live in the land. There is no faithfulness, no love, no acknowledgement of God in the land. There is only cursing, lying, murdering, stealing, and adultery. They break all bounds, and bloodshed follows bloodshed. Because of this, the land dries up, and all who live in it waste away. The beasts of the field, the birds in the sky, and the fish in the sea are swept away. Wow. Okay. So Israel is not, things aren't going well in the land, and that's because instead of an ongoing relationship with God, Israel has decided to have some affairs. I'm in verses 12 through 13 of chapter 4. My people consult a wooden idol. A divine's rod speaks to them. A spirit of prostitution leads them astray. They are unfaithful to their God. They sacrifice on the mountaintops and burnt offerings, and on the hills and under the oak and poplar and terebinth tree, that where the shade is pleasant. Therefore, your daughters turn to prostitution, and your daughters-in-law to adultery. This is where we find the nation of Israel. Thus, as we arrive in the book of Hosea, God has decided enough is enough, and therefore I am going to judge my people. But instead of just a judgment story, he decides to give us the full story. And for that, as God often does, as with Isaac and Abraham and the sacrifice that Rich talked about, God said, I'm going to give it to you, and maybe in a form that you'll understand. Rather than having somebody lecture you, how about we do, I love this, an object lesson. I love object lessons. I understand object lessons. I love to use object lessons. And so we start off with a marriage between two people, between Hosea, the prophet, and a woman named Gomer. Not Pyle, just Gomer, all right? Hosea chapter 1, verses 2 and 3 read, When the Lord began to speak to Hosea, the Lord said to him, Go and marry a promiscuous woman and have children with her. For like an adulterous wife, this land is guilty of unfaithfulness to the Lord. So he married Gomer, daughter of Diblam, and she conceived and bore him a son. Okay, there's the story. In the object lesson, in case you haven't figured it out, Hosea is God and Gomer is Israel. But if you like, we could take out the name Israel and we could just put God's people. Maybe we could even, at this point, take out the name God's people and we could put those who claim to be Christians. So this is not just a lesson for people that were thousands and thousands of years ago. This is a lesson that is very, 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 very important for us today. And we have to remember that this act of going out and finding a promiscuous woman and marrying her, this would have been humiliating to Hosea. He didn't say, woohoo, yes, thank you. This would have been a call or a knock on his character. And his questioning would have been, why did you choose her of all the people you could have chosen? Could you imagine this? Because God told me to. You must have heard wrong. She's a promiscuous woman. She's not wife-making material. The marriage would have been the talk of the town. God's man takes on a common whore to be his wife. But they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and in this case, God paints in very loud, broad strokes for us to hear. His message, specifically, Israel, you cheated on me while I have remained faithful to you. In judgment, she's a-coming. If you've ever been in a relationship where, whether it's one where you were married or just in a dating relationship and you found out that the other person was cheating on you, you know how it rips at your heart. That's what God's saying. You also know that in that moment when you find out they are cheating on you, you think of every conceivable way that you could torture their life for the rest of their life. Yeah, you're laughing because you've been there. God's not going to kind of take that approach. Now, he's not going to hold back. He's going to tell them, hey, yeah, you're going to get married. And by the way, you're not going to just get married, Hosea. I want you to have kids with this woman. There's a great sermon in that alone. I could talk about how your sins don't affect you. It's the next generation too. But that really isn't the point of the kids. The kids are part of the object lesson. Because lo and behold, Hosea does exactly like he says, and we get a son. His name is Jezreel, which means God sows. Verses 4 and 5 of chapter 1, call him Jezreel because I will soon punish the house of Jehu for the massacre at Jezreel. And I will put an end to the kingdom of Israel. In that day I will break Israel's bow and in the valley of Jezreel. So that name is the name of a place. It'd be kind of like naming somebody Virginia. Okay? What happened at that place, though, is this guy named Jehu took actions that led to the death of an evil king called Ahab. But as often happens, Jehu got a little zealous for God. And so not only did he kill King Ahab, he killed every single person he could find that was related to King Ahab. And then he killed a bunch of Baal prophets that God never told him to do. And he did all of this in the name of God. The only problem is, as you continue reading the story, I'm in 2 Kings chapter 10, verse 31, Jehu did it all, but it wasn't for God. You know who it was for? It was for Jehu. Yet Jehu was not careful to keep the law of the Lord, the God of Israel, with all his heart. He did not turn away from the sins of Jeroboam, which he had caused Israel to commit. So in short, Jehu massacred many in God's name, but did not honor God with his life. God's choice of the name Jezreel is a reminder of the story to let the people of God know judgment is being sowed. So we have Jezreel, and along comes baby number 2. And this is Lo Ruhamah, which simply means not loved. Ouch. What a horrible name to name your daughter. But remember, this is an object lesson. Hosea chapter 1, verse 6-7. Call her Lo Ruhamah, which means not love, for I will no longer show love to Israel, that I should at all forgive them. Yet I will show love to Judah, and I will save them, not by the bow, the sword, or battle, or by horses or horsemen. But I, the Lord, will save them. So Israel is about to be taken. And keep in mind, if you know anything about the Old Testament, you know how this usually works. God pronounces judgment. Israel goes about asking for forgiveness and begs for forgiveness, and they repent, and God rolls the judgment back, and so on we go, but not this time. He's letting them know, you've been unfaithful to me. And you know what? Judgment is coming. My love and my mercy have reached a point that all that's left is to judge. Now, please see at this point, God is going to spare the other nation, Judah. Remember, we're in a split nation at this point. We've got Israel to the north, Judah to the south. Judah's going to be spared, but that is going to be temporary because eventually, unfortunately, Judah is going to follow in the footsteps of Israel. So we've got 2 kids, but there's a third child that comes along. Hosea chapter 1, verses 8 and 9 says, after she had weaned Lo-Ruhamah, Gomer had another son. Then the Lord said, call him Lo-Ami, which means not my people. For you are not my people, and I am not your God. Now, I got to tell you, that one's got to be like a punch to the stomach to the Israelites. I mean, after all, they were God's chosen people, Abraham's descendants. He had redeemed them from Egypt. And sure, the relationship had some bumps at times. I mean, nobody's perfect, right? But they had been unfaithful over and over and over again. And God had taken them back. But now he's looking at them and saying, not my people. Not this time. Israel, you're going to fall. Israel, you're going down. And in the middle of all this, as we continue reading the story, God makes sure that you understand that, yes, I am angry. I am going to judge because God is faithful, but he's also just. Yet the Israelites will be like the sands on the seashore, which cannot be measured or counted, in the place where it was said to them, you are not my people. They will be called children of the living God. The people of Judah and the people of Israel will come together. They will appoint one leader and will come up out of the land, for great will be the day of Jezreel. So while God is going to back away for a while and going to let Israel and Judah both fall, keep in mind God is not going to forsake his promises. He absolutely intends to keep that promise that he made to Abraham, that your descendants will be as many on the seashore. He absolutely intends to keep that promise to David that, you know what, your kingdom is going to be everlasting. And then he even made a new promise to the land. He said, so someday all of this is going to end, and there is going to be one nation of Israel, and that nation is going to be under one leader. And in that day, God will sow that which we call restoration. But between judgment and restoration, something else has to happen. And that really is the major point of the book of Hosea. I'm in Hosea chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. And what has to happen is this thing called redemption. So we are a few years, or maybe many years, into Hosea and Gomer's marriage. And we get an update on how the marriage is going. The Lord said to me, Hosea, go show love to your wife again. Though she is loved by another man and is an adulteress, love her as the Lord loves the Israelites, though they turn to other gods and love the sacred raisin cakes. So I bought her for 15 shekels of silver and about a homer of methyl of barley. Then I told her, you are to live with me many days. You must not be a prostitute or be intimate with any man, and I will behave the same way toward you. Remember what God told him to marry? Go find yourself a promiscuous woman. And as we get down the road in the relationship, Gomer has decided to return to her lifestyle, being a promiscuous woman. But something has changed because now she finds that her promiscuousness has now led her into slavery. And there is two ways to read this. She is basically a sex slave. That is what she has become. And God looks at Hosea with those 3 kids. He said, I have a job for you, Hosea. Go buy her back. You got to be kidding me, God. She walked out on me and the kids. She's been sleeping around. Now, she's taking money to do this. And God, you got to be kidding me. You want me to do what? Yep. That's what I want you to do. Hosea, I would like you to take your own money and go and buy her back. Can you imagine the humiliation of this for Hosea? Having to buy back his wife from a slave trader? Knowing what she had been doing all of this time? God, you could have at least put the bill, right? Blessed me with an extra donation? No. I wanted it coming out of your pockets. Because you have to understand the lesson. And if you think that's bad enough, God's command didn't end there. He didn't just say, go buy her back and save her from her slavery. He said, oh no, when you're done buying her back, I want you to love her again. Now I know you've lost your mind, God. You don't want me you want me to love her? You want me to commit to her? You want me to honor the relationship when she had no honor for the relationship? God, that's not how human relationships work. Maybe you need to take a class on this. God said, this isn't about a human relationship. Matter of fact, I'm not done yet. I want you to buy her back. I want you to love her again. And I want you to bring her home. And I want you to give her her title back. Wife. Could you do it? If God puts you in that kind of a situation, could you do it? Could you dig that money out of your own pocket and go and buy somebody that not only cheated on you, did it publicly and took money to do it, and bring them back to your house, love them, and look at them and say, you are my wife? But he ain't done yet. Really, God? Forgive her past. So not only do you have to buy her back, not only do you have to love her, not only do you have to give her the title of wife, you've got to look at her past and you've got to forgive all of it. Could you do it? Yeah, I don't know that I could, but this is what Hosea is being commanded to do. As I read through this scripture and I read through all of the notes, it kind of gives you a new meaning to this idea in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 25. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. See, oftentimes we use this verse in marriage to teach husbands how they're supposed to treat their wives. You sort of missed Paul's point. Paul's point is, this is what Jesus did for you. This is what Jesus did for each and every one of us. This is the point behind the communion, is the fact that Jesus came and bought us back. And he loved us. And he took us in, and he gave us our title back. People of God. And then he took the next step. Father, forgive them. Wow. That's the object lesson. And I got to be honest with you, as I'm Gomer, and I can now relate to Gomer, and I'm standing there on that slave block, and I know what I've done, and I know where I've been, and I look up, and coming through the marketplace where they're selling the slaves, she looks up, and there comes hubby. And she can see he's got a bag of money in his hands. And I know exactly what she's thinking. She's horrified. Because she's about to become the property of the person she cheated on. Understand, the moment Homer paid the price tag, He could have done anything he wanted to Gomer. He could have beat her back black and blue, and there wasn't a single law around that was going to help her. He could have taken her out in the middle of the street and murdered her right there, and nobody would care. That's what he could have done. And I think if I was Gomer standing there on that block, that's what I'm thinking. I'm done for. Vengeance is mine, right? But that's not what Hosea did. If he did, it wouldn't be very much of a sermon, would it? Nope. He did exactly what God told him to do, restoring her to the status of loved, forgiven wife. Whew. Bigger man than me, Hosea. I got a lot I can learn from this man. But a lot of people love to stop their story there. That's not where the story ends. Because I read the verses to you. As he's talking to Gomer and saying, okay, you're home now, you're forgiven, you're loved, your wife, understand, that's all yours. But if you want to keep the relationship, there are some conditions for you. Condition number 1, you were to live with me many days. This isn't a one-night stand, Gomer. This isn't a week by week. We're not taking this on a trial basis and see how it works out. We are going to be together many days. In fact, all the ones that you have left. We're going to be husband and wife. And in this relationship, you must not be a prostitute or be intimate with any man. Understand, I am demanding faithfulness from you. Okay? It's going to get worse, right? Here's the twist in the story. The twist in the story is, I will behave the same way toward you. That's something I wasn't expecting. I mean, shouldn't he be able to like make her at least earn back the money? Well, that's not how forgiveness works. Shouldn't he at least be able to remind her every now and again that he had to come buy her off of a slave block? That's not how forgiveness works. He looks at this woman and he says, hey, this is what I want from you. But understand, I am going to demonstrate it to you because I am going to treat you how I want to be treated. Wow. Why would God teach the lesson there? Well, because in this lesson, Gomer, and you can take out the name Gomer, and you can put your name there. Gomer, you have been bought, and I am going to restore you, but do not mistake forgiveness as passive. This isn't, you got away with one. This isn't, woohoo, I scored big because you know what? I didn't get killed for what I was doing. And now I get a nice comfy home to lay down in the bed to sleep at night. And you know what? It didn't turn out that bad for Gomer, right? But that's not where forgiveness is. It isn't that God, or in this case, Hosea, forgave her and allowed her to go and do anything that she wanted to do. Or did he? As I read the story, he didn't chain her to a bed. Didn't chain her to a stove. He didn't chain her to a radiator or put a leash on her where she could only go so far. He didn't shoot a chip into her so he knows where she is 24/7. You realize what he just did, right? He set her free. She's free. He gave her the conditions that if you want the relationship is here for you, but guess what? From this point forward, Gomer was free to live in the relationship, but she was also free to again leave the relationship. That's the point of the story. God will not force you to follow. It has to be your choice. You have to be the one to make the decision. God, I want this relationship. God, I know my past. God, I know I don't deserve this relationship. I deserve the slave block or whatever came with it. But I'm going to take this opportunity And I'm going to just appreciate the fact that you loved me this much. I'm going to appreciate the fact that not only are you just, you are merciful. For the Israelites will live many days without a king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred stones, without ephod or household gods. Afterwards, the Israelites will return and seek the Lord their God, and David their king. They will come trembling to the Lord, to his blessings in the last days. Once again, you can take the word Israel there and you can just say people of God. Because eventually you have to come to the conclusion in this relationship that sin has consequences and the only solution to sin is God. Now, when I come to that conclusion, that idea may bring fear to my heart, but it also will bring blessings to your life. Which brings us to the point of Hosea's story. And the headline should not be, God told me to marry a prostitute. Simply put, it should be exactly as Hosea wrote it. Hosea chapter 14, verse 1. Return to the Lord your God. Your sins have been your downfall. And I guess that's the question we have to ask ourselves. We always talk about wanting forgiveness. We always talk about wanting to be restored. You understand, for your restoration or redemption had to happen. Jesus had to give his life for it. He paid a price a lot more expensive than what Hosea had to pay. And in that payment, he sets you free. And he asks you to live in the relationship that he's willing to live with you. And that, my friends, is our choice. Do we simply try to get away with one on God? Or do we accept the redemptive price and allow God to restore our lives?